right. Well, I'm sure many of you have not expected ending up this session with like some homework, but it seems people are already getting like ready to like go half an hour offline and like think more what they're changing. I love that. So, and with that, we have our final session before the lunch break, which is another true highlight. Our speaker, Sumon Sadhu, is a visionary serial entrepreneur and an investor also who is dedicated to amplifying human intelligence and building nationally significant companies to solve valuable commercial problems. So he's the co-founder and chief commercial officer of Atman Labs, a London-based applied AI, R&D and design company. Atman Labs is pioneering the next generation of vertical search engines that emulate human expertise, with their first product aimed at revolutionizing online shopping by providing individualized concierges for a unique and engaging discovery experience. And throughout his whole career, his expertise lies really at the intersection of R&D and market demand, and really figuring out how advanced technology can be applied to create transformative opportunities. He's been a founding team member of Quid, where he helped create a platform that enables machines to identify, visualize, and query patterns across vast amount of data. His efforts generated over like 2.6 million in enterprise sales in the first year, and a successful go-to-market strategy that attracted many large corporations and governments. And he has gone on in a very storied entrepreneurial career. He's founded Muse, a video search company that mimics human memory. As you can see, like the theme is kind of like getting biological intelligence like as an inspiration and bringing that like to the digital world. He has a strong academic background in biochemistry and bioinformatics from Oxford University and Imperial College of London. So he's really a deep domain expert. And he was a Wellcome Trust scholar there. So he really combines scientific rigor with entrepreneurial acumen. And I'm really, really honored that he's back in Europe. He has spent his early days in Silicon Valley. He's been in the 5th batch of Y Combinator. He's been really committed to foster a global entrepreneurial ecosystem. He's been playing a crucial role launching SeedCamp, the pan-European seed fund that many startups from the region here have benefited from. He's himself been an investor with several notable investments. He's partnered with many of the leading funds across the region and actually across the world. Founders Fund, A16Z, Sequoia, Benchmark, so basically all of the big funds. And I'm really, really excited to have him here as he shares his insights on innovation AI and the future of technology-driven entrepreneurship. Please give a warm round of welcome to Sumon. Thank you very much for coming here.
So for the last 15 years, I've spent time in Silicon Valley, building companies, raising hundreds of millions of dollars of venture capital, working with some of the best investors in the world, including Peter Thiel from Founders Fund and Paul Graham from Y Combinator. In addition to that, I've been a serial entrepreneur, as well as investing in a number of companies from seed that have gone on to develop unicorn or decacorn valuations. But about 6 weeks ago, I decided to make a controversial move. I decided to return back to London from Silicon Valley. So why would I do that? What was the big idea of coming back to London, to Europe? It was to actually do two things. One was to build a nationally significant company with a deep mind style mission to amplify the human conscious experience. And secondly, was to build a company that could transform the entrepreneurial ecosystem in London. And this has been a fascination of mine for years. And what I think is that every entrepreneur in the room in here, there's one big idea that's bigger than building a product or launching into a market, which is to build a company that completely transforms your nation. Your nation's ecosystem, the ambition, and the ceiling. And if you can do that, and if everyone can focus on that, then we can transform entrepreneurship globally. And that's way more interesting than just staying in Silicon Valley for the rest of my life. Now, when I started Seed Camp in 2007, we didn't know what kinds of companies existed in Europe. And Seed Camp discovered companies like TransferWise, as well as a well-known example in Romania, which is UiPath. Now, Daniel's story starts in a similar way to mine, in that he had spent 5 years at Microsoft in Seattle, returned back to Bucharest, and really was inspired by Paul Graham essays and everything that was going on in Silicon Valley, and really wanted to start a technology company of his own. It took many years of iteration to find a library that they were using for automation being taken up by industry, ultimately culminating to the formation of UiPath and leading to a $36 billion IPO. Now, why should we go to the US and come back and then start these companies? Why can't we stay at home and start these companies instead? And so, if we look in the history of technology, in the history of actually companies, the most significant, nationally significant companies were ones that sparked national revolutions. And so if we go back to the 16th century for the Dutch East India Company, it was actually the first ever private company. Now at the time, the Dutch were under the control of the Spanish, and they really sought to have their own independence. And what they did is they discovered a technology that was shipbuilding. And using this technology, they organized missions. And actually, in each of these missions, they allowed investors to invest, taking a share of these missions. And so, and they went around the world, particularly Southeast Asia, and identified spices and luxury goods, and expanded their economy significantly, leading to the Dutch East India Company, fostered in the spirit of liberalism, and leading to a complete change in national identity. Now, the principles behind the Dutch East India Company are actually similar to the principles that many of the world's most significant unicorns and decacorns that have shaped their ecosystem share. From the deep minds of the world that have changed artificial intelligence, to companies like Spotify, where every single one of you listen to music, to companies like TSMC in Taiwan, who controls the semiconductor industry. Now, if we go back to the history of the Dutch East India Company, we see that there are 3 main aspects of building a nationally significant company. 1 is to invent new technology. 2 is to use that technology to reshape an economy. And 3 is to completely change a national identity. So what are the tactics that come from the history of these most significant companies that lead to the playbook for building a nationally significant company? So first, let's start with talking about technology. For the Dutch, it was shipbuilding, but let's use some examples from history. The first tactic that nationally significant companies use to build new technology is it requires empiric leadership, a clarity of thought, not just on the company mission, but also a mission that amplifies an economy. And so this is one of my favorite examples, Alibaba, the B2B marketplace that was founded by Jack Ma. So Jack Ma was a school teacher. He brought together 17 of his closest friends in a room and said, we have to build a company that transforms China's economy. We have to build something that changes China's relationship to the rest of the world, to allow them to trade. We have to build this online marketplace. And not only that, we need to build a culture that emulates these American companies that we admire. We have to emulate the work ethic, not working 9 to 5. We need to also be good at hardware and software and go to market. And this clarity of thought, as well as this leadership, allowed him to not just compel his initial team, but subsequently raise hundreds of millions of dollars from venture capitalists, build many, many different products. And so you have to compel yourself to be an incredibly empiric leader in order to transform an economy and build a new technology. The second important principle is to think from first principles. So rejecting the status quo is absolutely important. And that means sometimes you can feel incredibly alone. Every single one of you has downloaded Spotify and probably listens to it every day. But Spotify, today we take the music streaming for granted. And one of the most important things is that Daniel Ek, as a teenager, used Napster And he was, a few months later, Napster was gone. And so he yearned for an experience to listen to music as quickly as he could download it. And by inventing a new protocol and by coming up with a new business model, today we no longer have to download music. Even the founders of Skype failed at this. And so what is important is reject the status quo, think from first principles, and only then can you have an original advantage. The third most important thing is to solve an interdisciplinary problem. Not one that can be copied easily by others, but requires many different pieces of thought to come together. This is Demis Hassabis, the founder of DeepMind. Demis was a geeky kid. He played chess, and he played video games as a child. And then as he started to learn computer science, he became a video game programmer, creating games like Theme Park, as well as working on the Night and Dark series. And later on, he went and did a PhD in neuroscience. Now, the combination of building AI that could play games and could emulate human biology in a more natural fashion using reinforcement learning was an interdisciplinary idea that not just transformed DeepMind as a company and became a really important place to work, but also transformed AI as a whole. You can't just work on an idea that has a single strand, but one that brings together disparate strands that can't be combined in any other way. Now that we've invented new technology and understand those principles, how do we reshape an economy? How do we expand our borders to discover new spices and new riches? The first thing is you have to identify a moment in history. Oh, we may have gone back. First thing we have to identify is a unique moment in a nation's history. And so Sachin Bansal and Binny Bansal are the two founders of Flipkart. Flipkart's the Amazon of India. Today, Flipkart has 48% of all e-commerce in India. But at the time of starting, they came out of Amazon. They anticipated that the emerging middle class and the rise of ubiquitous broadband was a unique moment in history to completely change India's economy from offline to online. And so when you find a unique moment in history, you must rise up and go up and rise to that occasion. Now, once you've established an opportunity like that, you need to raise the ceiling. You need to raise the ambition that's possible. And so going back to DeepMind, a British AI company, it wouldn't have been anticipated that a British AI company would not just create an AI that could challenge a grandmaster in Go and beat them, but also raise the ceiling towards the pursuit towards AGI. In fact, if it wasn't for DeepMind, there would probably be no OpenAI, and as such, there would be none of the advances in the global economy as a consequence of AI. By raising the ceiling of ambition, not only did DeepMind raise the ambition of the UK itself and building significant companies, but also raised the global ambition to transform humanity through AI. So it's incredibly important to raise the ceiling. So now that we've established those principles, how do we change national identity? And this is the piece that really matters. Now, the first thing is that every entrepreneur will tell you, well, they're really focused on building a product or building a service. Well, the most significant companies don't just build one product, they build multiple products. They become platforms whose culture continually invents new products according to customer demand. And so these are the founders of Nubank. Nubank is the default banking application in all of Latin America. 80 million users start their day by opening Nubank and paying for all of their services. Nubank doesn't just deliver banking services, but delivers insurance, delivers loans, and the other thing, it's completely broken up a banking monopoly that for many years charged exorbitant fees and completely didn't focus on the right consumer experience. So it's not just important to build a product, but important to build a company that invents multiple products if you're going to significantly alter national identity. The next point is that these companies can become so significant that they become monopolies in their own right, and these monopolies have geopolitical impact. TSMC, which is the #1 semiconductor manufacturer in the world, and every single one of you probably has a device with a TSMC manufactured chip in it, contributes 25% of all of the GDP of Taiwan. Think about that. don't just build a company that transforms your local economy or sells products into the market, but completely changes the GDP of a nation. And so significant is TSMC's influence is that it's one of the mainstays behind the geopolitical environment, allowing our world to exist as it is. It's not the country that's at the center of it; it's a company. And once you've built a company that can transform a nation, the important thing is that you create a company that can create many different types of entrepreneur within it. So Alibaba didn't just pioneer a B2B marketplace, but also built the first online shopping service in China, as well as built the first cashless payment system. And the teams that worked on those products went on to generate dozens and dozens of companies transforming China's ecosystem. And many of them also were able to sort of invest in others. And so not only did Jack Ma become one of the richest men in Asia, but also created many fortunes leading to many angel investors. And so if you can build a culture that creates a mafia, one that goes out against the nation's agenda, then you can continue this cycle infinitely and completely transform a nation. And so, armed with these principles, these are the principles that we think about when we think about building Atman, is first you have to build a foundation that involves incredible leadership, first principle thinking, as well as solving interdisciplinary problems. Once you've established that foundation, you need to completely reshape an economy. You have to build a talent monopoly. So Romania has plenty of brain drain, but if you could reverse that, if you could be the only place in the country to work for on that problem without having to leave the country. If you seize a historic moment in technology as well as the history of a nation, as well as raise the ceiling of ambition, not just locally but globally. And then once you've established that foundation, you should focus on changing national identity, scaling to infinity, generating multiple products from singular products, creating a national monopoly, a linchpin in your economy, and then creating a culture that creates many different entrepreneurs. This is how you create a mafia. Armed with these principles, my challenge to you is not just talk about the next UiPath or the next important company. Go build it. Take these principles, raise the ceiling, and by doing so, the biggest idea that we can all hold is that the most ambitious company that you can build is one that redefines a nation. Thank you, Techsylvania.